So my name is Jocelyn Goodwin. I have my MSN in nursing. I'm a nursing faculty here at Paradise Valley, and we're talking about how our experience in our black skin has infected our educational journey. So I want to say that I didn't have a big problem with that coming up because my world was so black. I went to a black church. My school, I came up in Detroit. It's an urban black city. I didn't have any of that issue till I ventured off into college. And I found that, even though I did well and I felt like I was loved and supported at home, other people would see my face and ascribe all of these things to me. My hair wasn't the right texture. I came from Detroit, so I couldn't be educated. Um, I was a single mother for a while, so that meant I couldn't do well. But that's what it was. It was the shock and the assumption that I won't do well because I'm black and I'm who I am, right? So the bad thing for me, the thing that I would not want any of my students to do, is to try to change who you are to fit into what other people think you should be. So I went through a period where I wanted my hair a certain way because I thought it would help me to do better in my academic, journey. And I went through a period of time that I didn't really like my skin because I had been somewhere where everybody didn't look like me. And I don't know if you've ever had this experience. I'm sure the ladies have. They touch your hair, they touch your skin, they want to know. And it's really, it can be detrimental to who you are inside. So it's been a journey personally, and it's been a journey academically. And what I would want to say, like I said before earlier, turn your barriers into blessings. So I loved what some of my colleagues said about, you tell me I can't do this, well, look at me do it. Okay. So I'm just saying, my advice is you can do whatever you want to. I know, especially for people of color, you don't see us that often in these positions, but we do exist. And we are here to tell you it can be done. And those barriers that you walk around or step over or bust through, you're just making the space a little wider for those to come behind you. So it's a wonderful thing. Education is a wonderful thing. God made me black and I wouldn't change it for anything. I wouldn't change it. It's a wonderful journey.
And just being African American in education, I haven't really had that many challenges, right? I haven't had any major issues because I knew at a very early age I wanted to play football, right? So I knew early on I had to attend college, so that wasn't even an issue. It wasn't until later in life I think, Brian, you and I were talking about this earlier. I've been in school since the fifth grade. I mean, since the first grade, right? I've had one African American teacher since the first grade. I don't know, what's that, 15, 20, 25 years of school? One. I think it's very unfortunate that we're having this conversation right now where we're saying, in 2021, I can't remember one African American male teacher or female teacher that I had. And yet, even in college, about 33 to 35% of students are African American. Approximately 70 to 75% of professors are white men. Mm-hmm. Less than 5% of college professors are African American. Less than 5%. And yet about 30 to 35% of students are African American. That's the issue, because we're talking about this in 2021. We're not talking about this in 1920s. In 2021, less than 5% of African American college professors are African American. So we're talking about this earlier, like African American student, the chances are high. It's not that likely that I'm going to be someone that's going to be in front of me that looks like me, right? So that's an issue, that's a concern. So for me, just being African American, that's been my challenge, my struggle. The one person I look up to is Dr. Cornel West, African American professor. I can't name anyone off the top of my head, right? And that was my recent discovery, like in the past 2 or 3 years, right? So I think that's been my challenge, just having someone that looks like being in the classroom. I'm not saying that individuals of other races can't teach me or have that connection, but it's more about culture, right? So when you're talking to that kid from Detroit or from Chicago or from Compton, when they're in the classroom, you say, hey man, I know what it's like, when mom, when you gotta comb the hair, or I know what it's like when you get a flat tire, you can't afford to get that tire fixed. Or I know what it's like when you're trying to do your work in school and you're hungry. I know what it's like when the single mom or single dad can't take care of you, right? I know what it's like when you may have your dad addicted to drugs. You never met your dad. I can relate to that. Or you're taking an online class, you don't even have a computer, or you don't have internet access, or you have those non-academic challenges that most students don't have. And that's why I really truly enjoy the students in the community college, because they're grinders, man. Right? They're grinders. There's a difference between a student and there's a difference between a student at ASU and at Paradise Valley Community College. Not academically, but they have those non-academic challenges that most students don't have. So as an African American man, that's always been my challenge. I need someone that can relate to me from a cultural standpoint. I need that, right? It makes a difference. So that's been my challenge. And I'm so passionate about it because I've talked to those students after class. I say, Professor Watkins, I didn't turn in my assignment because my internet was cut off. Wow. Okay. Let's work through that. How do we work through that, right? Versus I've talked to ASU students that get upset because their mom or dad purchased a BMW in the wrong color. Right? You got a BMW, you want a red BMW, but they brought you a white one, right? Wow. Versus my student that can't even finish their school or their project because they don't have lights on. So that's been my challenge.
Well, I grew up in Arizona, and most of the time I was the only black kid in the class. And I'm sure some of you might have some of those same experiences. And so I didn't see teachers who looked like me, except my parents. They were both educators, and they were the first to go to college in our family, and and kind of set the stage for us growing up. And then I always had this feeling that I wanted to go to law school and I wanted to be an attorney. And I don't know where that came from because I had never seen a black attorney before. I'd seen shows on TV, but back then, right, none of them were black. But I just kept that in my head. And growing up, I just kept pushing through. Once I decided to go to college, well, it wasn't really a choice because my parents are like, this is what you need to do, right? This is how you can reach your goals and make a better life for yourself. Some of the same experiences, right? I went to college here in Arizona and was the only black person in the class, right? And sometimes that's a challenge for conversations and just figuring out your identity and who you are and being comfortable with yourself. But eventually, I made it to law school. I figured out that process. My parents were like, "We can't help you because we have no idea," but they were supportive, and I figured it out. And now I tell my daughter, "You can do whatever you want to do, right? Even though you may not see anyone that looks like you in that space." And law school in itself was difficult. I actually had a professor who told me that I was not gonna do well as an attorney because I didn't look like, and he said this, right? You don't look like, and talk like and act like your peers in the class. And I was like, well, I'll show you, right? And here I am teaching. So it's been a journey, but it's been a part of my identity as well.
My journey took place back east in Boston, Massachusetts. I went to Northeastern University, and I was in the programming area, studying to be a programmer. And basically, I was not only the only African American in the class, but the only woman. And it was very challenging because a lot of the students were young white males, and they had their opinions about people of color and women of color, and they felt that women and blacks didn't belong in that arena. And so I had a great mentor. He was a white guy. He said, you could do whatever you want to do. And I was one of the students that had the highest grades in the class, and I remember a story where he used to come and we picked out nicknames, and he would write the nickname on there so that it identified with the grade. And so he said, because he wanted everybody to pick out their own tutoring for the class. So he would go from highest grade to the lowest grade, and he would put down what you got in the grades. And basically, he said, well, you know what your grade is, you know who your code word is, and you pick out the tutoring you need. So I was sitting there eating lunch because I was happy with the grade I got, and the guys kept coming over and saying, well, do you need some help? Do you need some help? And I'm like, well, I would have said something if I needed help. And basically, they sort of figure out that I had one of the highest grades in the class. So that was, and my instructor told me he did that basically so that people could understand, especially the white guys in the class, understand that anybody can go and be a programmer if they put their mind to it. So then that's why I try to encourage students for the last 24 years that I've been here at PV. It doesn't matter if you're, a male or female. If you want to be in technology, it usually chooses you. You don't have to choose it.
Okay, my story is a little bit different because I was born and raised in Nigeria, in West Africa. Over there, we had no racial problem, no racial issue, so no identity problem, because we are all the same. The only problem we have is one of ethnicity and relative poverty. So that shaped my approach to education. Because over there in Nigeria, where I was born, where I was raised, where I attended school, education, a good education is your passport out of poverty. So right from childhood, I faced education knowing fully well that with a good education, I was going to have a very high standard of living. The people around me, because I was born in a small city where they had a large factory and you had some educated people. At some few there, we had a neighbor who had a PhD in wood technology, and he was living very well. So for him, it was like a model to me. My parents were not rich, so I wanted to excel in education. Now, after high school, I had international scholarship, and I had to go to Poland, of all countries, to study undergraduate. There I had double problem. First, I had a language issue. I spent 1 year at the University of Łódź to study the Polish language. Then after that, I went to the University of Warsaw. Also, I wanted to attend the best university wherever I went. I went to the University of Warsaw, Warsaw University sometimes called. And there in my class, in my department, I was the only African in the entire department. Throughout the 6 years, I did my first and second degrees there. I was the only African. And I made it a point of duty to excel because I discovered that people had stereotypes. They believed that, oh, from Africa, what can you do? Apart from being an African, you can't even speak the language very well. But I performed so well that I was even a tutor so my language. So I was a student tutor. And I graduated with a very high GPA. So I always, after that, I was not satisfied. I wanted to get to the zenith of my education, of my career. When I went back to Nigeria, I read for my PhD and also teaching in university at the same time. Then after I got my PhD and I've taught in university, I started to leave academics to go into international development. And before I was assigned to come to the United States. And I came here with my 5 children. They were still very young. And the first thing I told them that you've got to excel in education. And thank God, 5 of them today, they are all university graduates. One is an orthopedic surgeon. One has a master's degree in electronic engineering. The other is a nurse practitioner. The other one is a doctorate in physical therapist. The other one just graduated. So from day one, I told them, you must excel. I don't believe in achievement gap. So my advice is that do not allow your identity to pull you down.
That's good.
My name is Brian Wilson, and I'm from Detroit, Michigan, and I grew up in a urban neighborhood, and also I'm a first generation college student. Growing up in an urban neighborhood, I really didn't see a lot of people going off to college as I was growing up. Neither one of my parents went to college, so I just really didn't have a lot of information about, how important it was to go to college, and it just didn't sink into my mind that at a young age this is something that I needed to do, like absolutely. Growing up in Michigan, it's a blue collar state, and so where I grew up, most of the people wanted to go work for one of the big three automotive plants when they graduated high school. That was like the big thing. People weren't talking about going off to college. They were talking about whether or not they're going to go work at Ford Motor Company, GM Motor Company, Chrysler Motor Company, which one of the big three they were going to go work for, right? And my family at one time was the GM Family of the Year. And they had that award for several years. So a lot of my family worked for GM and Ford Motor Company. And they did well for themselves, made a great living, provided for their families. So that was like the big deal. So for me, after high school, I decided, well, I don't want to go into one of the automotive plants. I want to do something different. I didn't want to go straight to like a 4-year university. I wasn't really big into school like that, so I decided to go into automotive and diesel technology. It was a quick program. I could complete it in 18 months rather than being at a university for 4 years. So one of the recruiters came and talked to me, so I decided to go to the #1 school in the country for automotive and diesel repair, and that was Nashville Auto Diesel College. And finished that and was able to make great money, make a good living for myself. But after doing it for a few years, I decided, I'm ready to advance my education, go back to school. And so I really didn't know how to go about it, because I hadn't taken any ACTs, SATs, none of that, And so I ended up meeting a young lady I started dating, and she worked in higher education. Her mother was the college president. So by me dating the daughter of the college president, it kind of afforded me some opportunities to learn a lot, and to going to the college and had a red carpet kind of rolled out for me, and all of the resources was provided for me. Everything that I needed, I was taken to each department. I got everything I needed, and I was ready to go. And I just thought to myself, if I had any type of resources like that growing up, or knew someone who was connected in higher education at a younger age, maybe I would start thinking about, that at a younger age, So my advice, to students that's thinking about higher education, and maybe, they're a first-gen student, they don't know a lot, try to find a mentor. Try to find somebody. It may not be a parent, may not be a family member, it may be one of your friends' parents, or somebody who you can gravitate to, who can teach you and show you kind of the way to approach higher education. That would kind of be my advice to someone looking to further their education, but maybe doesn't have a lot of resources. Because when I got to tell you, when I was a kid, my closest affiliation with higher education was watching the Cosby Show and watching a Different World.
Right.
And that's how I related to college. That was kind of the only way. So I ended up going from, automotive and diesel college to going to a community college where I got my AAS degree in heavy equipment maintenance, and then I got my associate's in arts degree. And then I actually helped to create our articulation agreement between Wayne County Community College and Eastern Michigan University so that I could apply my AAS degree towards a bachelor's in science degree and do a 90-30 program at Eastern Michigan. I pioneered the articulation agreement. I was the first student to complete that 90-30 program based on that articulation agreement. So I completed a bachelor's of science in technology management, and I was the first person to do that program. So it just meant a lot, and then I decided to go on and get my master's degree and got my master's in exercise science. Once again, I found myself in a place where, I needed more resources, even after getting my master's degree, because at that point, I hadn't did any internships, I hadn't did any grad assistantships, and I had no experience as far as in the line of work I wanted to go into. But I had nobody talk to me. Even my program director hadn't talked to me about doing internships, about doing grad assistantships. And so that was kind of a barrier for me. So my advice would also be to, students, even after you finally get the resources you need and become a college student and be successful, also make sure that you look into internship work, grad assistantships, making sure you get that experience under your belt, so then when you do graduate, you have some experience, and then you're, a better candidate for, positions. And so make yourself more marketable.